And I'd just like to firstly introduce Tony Ottaviano, Managing Director and CEO of Liontown Resources.
I'd like to thank the Paydirt organisers for giving me the opportunity to present today. I would have loved to have been there in person, but unfortunately, I've been made a close contact and I'm in quarantine. So I couldn't be there to firstly launch our new brand. And I hope you've been to our booth and seen the new brand, but also launch our new website. And we're very keen to move the company from its original roots, being a bona fide explorer, to a developer now. And I'll show you today where we're up to on the development of the Kathleen Valley project. But ultimately, we want to be an operator and build a company that is respected by all stakeholders. So if I just move to the agenda, we're going to cover a considerable amount in the short time that we've got today, but hopefully by the end, I've given you the impression that we're well underway on building this world-class asset in Kathleen Valley. So let's start with the investment highlights. Kathleen Valley is a globally significant Tier 1 project. In fact, we are planning to do further exploration just after Easter to drill out the ore body because it's currently open at depth, and there is the high-grade element of the ore body that we need to drill out further. So we're quietly confident that we could see further improvement in the size and quality of this resource. We have just put in place 2 foundational offtake agreements with both LG Energy Solution and Tesla, and we're currently negotiating another offtake with a number of Tier 1 customers. We have a clear long-term strategy and how we're going to maximise value for our shareholders, which I'll touch upon in today's presentation. ESG is core to our strategy. We're not going to simply do ESG by PowerPoint. We have a plan, an aspiration. We've issued our first sustainability report of a company of our size that was significant. We're going to build a renewable farm from day one. More than 60% renewable power will be delivered to this operation day one. We're well capitalised and we have strong flexibility. We did a raise of over $450 million in December last year, which puts us in a strong position to negotiate further funding with the banks, commercial banks, puts us in a strong position with our customers. That gives them certainty and the project validity. And finally, it puts us in a strong position with our contractors. They know we want to build and they're in active negotiations with us. We have a robust market, a market that will continue to be positive well into the next decade. And I'll talk about that in the presentation. And finally, it also, on one side, you have to have a world-class asset, but you need a world-class management team. And we're building that leadership and strong alignment with our shareholders. Just an overview of where our assets are. You know, we've got our flagship asset in Kathleen Valley, but we've also got our Buldania asset, which we recently put out some drill results. We're very encouraged by what we've seen at Buldania, and we will continue to explore the potential of Buldania. We see Buldania as a long-term strategic inventory for our refinery project when we move into that phase. The other 2 points that I want to draw to your attention on this slide is the leadership team at Liontown, the directors and the management team, hold up to 18% of the company's shares. Most of them bought in the market. We have definite skin in the game. Our interests, our motivations are completely aligned with all our shareholders. And the other point that I wanted to draw your attention to is the cash that we've got on our balance sheet. And we've got just another bit of funding to negotiate with the banks, and then we're fully funded for FID. I've spoken about our board and management team, the calibre of people we've got on the team, and we're continuing to build this under the stewardship of Tim Goyder as the chair. Liontown strategy. We see it as a 3-horizon strategy. The first horizon is we must deliver Kathleen Valley to its full potential. We need to drill out the resource, build the facility, expand the operations, and then deliver the product that we need to deliver. The second horizon is the downstream value maximising pathway. We've published our scoping study on the refinery, and we're now moving this into PFS. The first stage of our PFS, like Kathleen Valley, was to do a comprehensive range of test work, and that's what we've started. The final horizon is Liontown to its full potential. We want to expand the portfolio through organic growth, and we will look at opportunistic value accretive M&A if they present themselves to us. And finally, there's potentially there to be a participant in the circular economy in the battery value chain. Just a market update. We continue to see a strong push for demand. I read an article today which showed the number of charging stations being invested across North America and Europe, which is a key enabler to the EV mobilisation. And of recent times, we've seen a number of companies announce growth plans, a lot of them being brownfields expansions, some of them known expansions but slightly accelerated, and others being new information. I mean, all these projects will require significant capital, significant resources, and the bringing on of supply will take time. On the greenfield side, you have ourselves and you have a number of other competitors. Again, greenfields expansion or greenfields growth is tough. But we are well positioned at Liontown, given the work we've done and the position we are both financially and also physically to be ready to take on a challenge in this current market. So we see the deficits getting even more significant, and notwithstanding the expansions announced today, there's room in the bed for everybody. If we look at the amount of metal and the various chemistries for the various batteries, we see lithium a constant through all the various battery chemistries. And a question I get asked around is whether the increasing spodumene price will have a risk around substitution of lithium in the battery. And I think on average, my estimates are there are about 11 kilos of lithium metal in an EV. And if you look at today's spodumene price, that's about $2,000 per vehicle. I think we are safe from a substitution perspective. And then there's the physics. It is the lightest metal on the planet. So therefore, on an energy density perspective, nothing competes with it. One of the things I found coming into this industry was how opaque how the market is around price discovery. And I wanted to draw the people today while I'm presenting around the work we've done in consultation with Fast Markets at Liontown to better understand the pricing mechanisms. So on one hand, you have how price is exposed and how price is set. And then there's how do you transact? And we've seen Pilbara take a position with the BMX platform. I mean, there was a great opportunity to bring true transparency into the market, and it's done that with the auctions that they've done in recent times. But if I just walk you through this graph here, on the left-hand side, you see the number of transactions that Fast Markets has noted to give you that price transparency, with the last one being, the $80 a kilogram for hydroxide. But what's more interesting for me is the number of observations that are now occurring for Fast Markets to log. It's tripled in the last quarter. And then you've got the number of companies contributing data. There has been a steady increase. So for me, this is an encouraging trend. The more we bring transparency, the more we bring governance to the way price is exposed, the better the industry will be. And if we look at the situation in regards to the historical picture here, spodumene producers have historically, if you look at it, the spodumene price as a percentage of the hydroxide, it's been averaging over at least 3 years around that 4% mark. And we've seen in recent times, spodumene pricing as a percentage of hydroxide increased to well over 10%. So it's important as we enter into new offtakes that we get fair and reasonable pricing for the spodumene. And that pricing needs to be transparent and truly governed by supply and demand dynamics. I've spoken briefly about our ESG credentials, which are core. And I want to lead by saying, we're very proud of the native title agreement we've signed with the Joal people on the 17th of November last year. A groundbreaking native title agreement, the first of its kind since Juukan Gorge. And unfortunately, we don't get the recognition, not that we are looking for it, from the investment market about how profound an agreement this has been. But besides having that long-term partnership with our key stakeholder, the Joal, there are a number of elements that we're tackling at the same time. The importance of having that renewable energy target right up front. And we're out and we've received tenders on the renewable farm in recent times. And then there's the governance. We will hold ourselves to a high standard. We will be reporting across the standards that the industry expects. And we are participating in the IRMA program, again, another accreditation which has worldwide credibility. In November last year, we published our DFS results, and we can see the economics for this project are compelling. A $4.2 billion NPV, real after tax. And I emphasize this because we're not quoting you pre-tax NPV, and we're using a discount rate of 8% real, which we think is appropriate for the jurisdiction in which this asset is located. The other 2 points I want to draw your attention to on the slide is the all-in sustaining cost of $452, and that is at a average spodumene price of $12.87. So it includes royalties. And on the right-hand side, you can see we're leveraged to the spodumene price, and the DFS assumption gave us the 4.2 billion, but you can see how much upside we have, even on the downside at 800. This is a compelling project. One of the key outcomes of our native title agreement with the Joal was the move from open cut to underground. The Joal people pushed us to consider a lower footprint on the surface. And when we explored that opportunity, we found that how much significant benefit we can accrue from going underground. If we were to mine this ore body by open cut, we would have to deposit over 1 billion tonnes of waste on the surface. We would need over 40 trucks to move that material. And think about the increased diesel consumption, the increased resources, the increased maintenance, the increased camp size, the increased flights, the multiplier effect. Whereas by going underground, we simply, by definition, will be selective and prevent the dilution issues which present the open cut mines that are open today. From an underground perspective, it is a very shallow mine, only 450 metres deep at its lowest point. But what is critical here is the tonnes per vertical metre. It can range between 100 to 200,000 tonnes per metre. We've done an extensive program of geotech drilling over 5 kilometres, and we've got some of the best ground conditions in the world. So we're very confident that we can extract this at a very competitive price. Our current mining costs are $56 all in, including sustaining capital and mining G&A. We've gone out to tender with at least 5 mining contractors, and the variance in price was no more than 10%. And we've used this price or this cost, and we've compared it to other projects in and around Australia. The flow sheet. We've done an extensive amount of test work on this flow sheet. We are confident that we will produce a high quality product greater than 6% concentrate. We have good quality water on site, which makes the flotation circuit far more reliable and far more efficient. We've done over 140 staged float tests, and we've done this across the ore body at various elements. So we wanted to understand how good the repeatability of this work would be. And you can see from this graph, it's very tightly correlated. It's a very simple flow sheet. Simple means less complexity, better maintenance, better performance. We're very proud at Liontown that when we commit, we want to deliver. We completed the DFS in November, and a week later, we moved into FEED, a week later. So we've started the engineering design in detail so that we can finalise our capital estimate down to the last dollar. We're out in tender, and I'll talk about that in a minute. We've done the DFS, we've done the equity raising, we've signed our offtakes, we've got one more to do. We're into FEED as we speak, and all of this is to move towards FID in June. We don't publish a DFS and then 2 years later, we're still talking about it. We're moving into construction. Now, one of the final steps that I need to bring to the board before FID is permitting. And given that we've done our native title agreement, the remaining permits are now being submitted to government and going through the mechanical process that government departments have to do in order to sign off on these permits. And we're confident that we will get them, the ones that we need to start construction before FID. We're looking for production to commence by the end of the second quarter in 2024. That has been a consistent date that we have published for the last 12 months. We have put in the orders for long lead items. The SAG mill has already been ordered and it's in the production slot. That is our longest lead item and the critical path. So besides focusing on Kathleen Valley, where the focus should be, on a slower cadence, we're working on the PFS for the downstream. And we're looking at options. And as I mentioned earlier, we've started the test work. So I've summarized this just in a few minutes in the previous slide. But approaching FID is the critical milestone that we are now preparing for. And just to get you a sense as to what's happening on the ground, we are building a team, we're recruiting as we speak. We've got our engineer Lycopodium putting out the tender packages. We've received a number of key tender packages at the moment. We're adjudicating those tender packages, and we've got a few more to release. We've got our partners working side by us, and here's a recognition of the great work they've done for us. So I hope to give the audience a sense that real effort is being exerted in order to meet that FID and that production start. Our offtake strategy. We've secured some of the best caliber tier 1 customers of many lithium producers. Our strategy has been one of diversification, both geography and by position on the value chain. We wanted to start at the OEMs and work back. We wanted to be as close as possible to where the technology is being adopted and where the technology is being designed. That will give us early momentum as we move downstream to understand how battery chemistries are changing. We've got one more offtake to do, and we're working through that as we speak. And we will leave 15% of our production for the spot market. This diagram here shows the transition as we move from spodumene producer to ultimately lithium hydroxide producer and the whole downstream processing opportunity. The other benefit of having customers further down the value chain, it allows us to easily transition our offtake agreements from spodumene to hydroxide with the same customer set. And as we expand the operation from 2.5 million tonnes of mine production to 4 million tonnes of production in 28 to 29, that additional spodumene capacity we unlock will move into train 1 of our downstream facility. And we find ourselves in 29 where we'll be producing spodumene and honouring our 10-year contracts. We'll be producing a lithium chemical in hydroxide, but also participating in the spodumene market. So we will be well positioned. We will have a great hedge and flexibility across our whole offtake book to capture value where we can. And this just shows you the long-term strategy as it moves from Kathleen Valley downstream and then potentially Buldania and other new sources of spodumene. So finally, I just want to summarise the key investment proposition here at Liontown. We have a tier 1 asset in Kathleen Valley, which has exceptional economics and growth optionality. We believe timing our production in mid to late 24 gives us that flexibility around timing it to when the material supply deficit appears. We're very proud of our ESG positive credentials, and we will continue to build on those, starting with the renewable farm, but more broadly across the various stakeholders that we work with. And we have that integrated opportunity of being a fully raw materials and chemical producer in a strategically beneficial location. The near-term priorities are, we'll execute the offtake agreements to support the FID, we'll finalise the funding, we'll secure the long lead items and the permitting, we'll finalise the EPCM negotiations and select our contractor, and finally continue to develop that downstream strategy. So thank you everybody for listening to me. I apologise again that I couldn't be there in person, and I'm happy to field any questions with my team at the booth or to reach out to me separately through this information contact details. Thank you.